MP Irian is signing in to speak. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Hey, that's why he's my second favorite MP. Thank you to the Minister of VSR. Good afternoon to you, Madam Chair, feared colleague MPs, the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers, support staff. Good afternoon to the people of St Maarten. Madam Chair, when I look at the budget and you follow the direction of the ministers, I feel like the only minister, or not the only, one of the few ministers that got the memo on what the budget was supposed to look like would be, in this case, the Prime Minister. Madam Chair, the Minister of Finance, not only now, but also in the CC, mentioned that this budget it doesn't have any new policies. Some even alluded to it, some MPs of the coalition even alluded to it being the exact same budget as 2024. But to my knowledge, we're in 2025. So why do we have a budget that replicates the exact same budget of 2024? When we look at budget debates in the region, so not just next Zocor, so when we look at budget debates in the region, the government or the sitting party, that budget debate, it brings hope to the population. It lets the people know exactly what they can expect for the year. It deals with the ills and the current issues that the people have questions to. Again, it was stated that no new policies will be in the budget. But when we look at the budget, and we look at, for example, and again, I'll go back to that of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister was clear. 8 million guilders for this department, and this is how it's going to be spent, and this is our plans with this 8 million guilders. And similar to what my colleague MP York said, Prime Minister, you would have to get some type of synergy, because it can't be that every minister coming inside with a different concept of how to do the budget. Because, again, the Minister of Finance mentioned amendment is coming. If an amendment is coming, why does the Ministry of Rummy have in their presentation revenue-generating aspects of their budget? Initiatives, land tipping fees. Is that something that you're going to execute in 2025? If so, why is the revenue not reflected in the budget? Again, Rummy, waste management fees and taxes, new taxes. The minister said, and this government said, it's unrealistic for us because we had tourism tax in the budget. That's why the budget was unrealistic. But the Ministry of Rumby, what they put in their presentation? Waste management fees and taxes. So is this budget then unrealistic if they plan to do taxes for 2025 but don't include it in the budget? Prime Minister, through you, Madam Chair. The Ministry of Rummy talks about an environment impact fund. Again, where, through you, Madam Chair, I'm asking the Minister of Rummy, where in the budget 2025 can we see these initiatives? Through you, Madam Chair, I'm asking the Minister of Finance, where in the budget 2025 is any of these revenue-generating measures reflected in the budget? Because as the young people say, they say these days, it feels as if the majority of this government is just gaslighting us. MP York mentioned that we like to put out articles and say what we're going to do and have all these plans, but then when it comes to it in reality, we're not going to execute. The marketplace was mentioned in August, saying that it would be ready in December, or in February, to come to find out that there wasn't no building permit. So that means in August we already knew it was not going to be executed. The Ministry of Rummy mentions an SLA for road maintenance. Okay, so that then there'll be a reduction in the cost, but in the budget, there's no reduction. Again, through you, Madam Chair, I would like confirmation from the Ministry of Rummy, the Ministry of Finance, and even the Prime Minister. Where are these revenue-generating measures that the ministry mentioned? Again, going back to the presentation of the Prime Minister, clear. This is our budget, this is a budgeted amount, and this is what we plan to execute within that amount. I would even have liked for a little bit more detail going forward, but at the end of the day, it was factual. The presentations today, Madam Chair, or yesterday, does not reflect Budget 2025. It reflects hopes and wishes, wants, but no type of money to execute. We go back to the comments by the Ministry of Finance, overflight fees, the cost, the revenue generation, but it's not reflected in the budget. It's not. Hopes, wants, and dreams. These are topics, whenever this government decides to bring an amendment, then I could expect to see those in the presentation. Why bring these things in the budget 2025 when we already said it's not going to be there? On that note, Madam Chair, I would also like to know, when can we expect this amendment? Seemingly there's a lot of wants and wishes, a lot of revenue generation. When can we expect this budget amendment that then, I guess, would reflect these revenue-generating measures? When we look at the presentations, I see that, for example, in the CAPEX, we have the land purchase, because a few members in here like to go back and talk about the previous administration, which I agree, because the previous administration brought the capital expenditures, the money to the country for the land purchase that's currently in the budget 2025. They also brought the money for Dutchwater that's now currently in 2025. They brought the purchase of vehicles for Rummy, which is also in 2025. The vessel for Rummy, which is also from the previous administration. The land of 80 million guilders, that was also from the previous administration. The hard surfacing of road, which was no surprise there, also from the previous administration. So my question is, what is the plans of this current government? What are their ideas? What do they want to execute? I saw an interview from the Ministry of Rummy, the Minister of Rummy, where he was excited to talk about the construction of a bird watch in the pond. That money that's on the CAPEX to do that was also, and the vision was also from the previous Minister of Rummy. That was his vision. What is the vision of the current ministers, each one of you? Because everything in this budget just reflects the vision of the previous administration. The chair of Parliament and the CC mentioned that she wants Parliament to come together and find ways to generate money to help the government. And I understand her concerns, but I don't think that her concerns match that of the government, the executing branch. Because no matter what ideas come from MP Otley, MP York, myself, they're not taken up anyway. So I don't necessarily believe that the wishes of maybe the MPs in Parliament of the coalition match that of the executing branch. Every interview I hear from the ministers or articles that come out, it mentions, yes, but we don't have money. Or even persons that go to the ministers and ask for certain things, almost every answer from every minister or every email that comes out is, we don't have money, we don't have money, we don't have money. But then I have to question if this government actually wants to generate revenue. Because when I have to hear comments or concerns by MP York about the government waiving casino and lottery fees of over 10 million guilders, or dollars, sorry, then do you really want to generate revenue? And how come it's always the bigger companies that get away with this? How come it's always the companies that actually probably cause the most harm to our society get away with this? So my question now to the Minister of Finance, Prime Minister, and also Minister of TIAT, are we also going to look to waive fees? Now, first of all, can we get a direct answer? Were any fees waived from any casinos or any lottery companies? Are there plans to waive any fees from casinos or lottery companies? And last time in the budget amendment, as soon as we talked about casinos and lotteries, I get messages one time saying, you can't talk about them. And I'm like, it shows exactly who the masters are of certain individuals here. Because as soon as you question certain things, it becomes, no, we can't talk about our donors. We will defend them at all costs. So again, very direct, are there any plans to waive fees for casinos and lotteries, or has this already been done? And if it was done, I would like to know if it was approved by the current Council of Ministers or the previous one. Did it go through that process? And if it was done, what years was it done for? If it was done, what years it was done for? And is there a possibility then that companies that have a backlog in their business license can then also be waived also? Because I'm pretty sure that there are also companies that are asking for to waive their fees for, let's say, the time of after Hurricane Irma. Is there any possibility to waive their fees? Madam Chair, when we look at budgets, budgets typically reflect the time, the moment. After, let's say, Hurricane Irma, that budget was how we're going to come back and build back strong after Irma. The pandemic budgets reflected the pandemics. The budget of 2025, I have no idea what it represents, because it does not tackle our current issues. You know, in the last couple of weeks, and I enjoyed the direct information from the Ministry of Justice, the presentation, but what I lacked from the minister, I would say, in the last couple of weeks, is a little bit more public attention and concern to what was going on. Every other day, there's some incident on the road. In none of the presentations today tackled our daily issues, our simple daily issues. I think MP DeWeaver kind of touched on that. Yes, we're focusing on tourism, but at the end of the day, I have to live here. Not tourists only don't have to enjoy St. Maarten. I also have to live here. If you go in any of the big groups on Facebook, the XMA bus, or even the local groups, the buy-sell trades, there are persons every day worrying about their own lives. And it's not a battle of, let's say, scooters and persons driving cars. It's about what is government going to do to address these concerns. Because for every incident that we see that shows up in the media of an accident or a theft, there's probably 5 more that happen on that same day. There's probably 5 more that happen on that same day. There's a lot of reports that don't make it to the public. In the past, for example, TIAT would have, and let's touch on traffic, for example. In the past, TIAT would have their controllers supporting the Ministry of Justice to control traffic. In the presentations today, yesterday, I didn't see anything supporting, as I mentioned, our current issues. I would have loved to hear, hey, you know what? At these peak hours, we will have police presence at the roundabout by Bellevue. We're going to have a police presence on a daily at particular school districts. We're going to have police presence at these certain locations where we know, right, have high areas of traffic congestion and persons maybe not abiding by traffic laws. When we look at what the island looks like, I listened to the Prime Minister's, through Madam Chair, I listened to the Prime Minister's, because only two ministers showed up to the press briefing for the opening of the year, so I didn't get to hear from the others. And he mentioned in his remarks stating, you know, he sees and he feels the optimism of the people, a shift in the people in the optimism. And I don't know the bubble of the person the Prime Minister hangs around, but there was definitely a lot less optimism in the last 3 or 4 months than previously. Every single day, I see people complaining about garbage. Every single day. every single day. This is honestly the worst it has been since I came back home to St Maarten after college. That's 10 years. It's the worst it has been. But when I look at the budget, we rush and we fight to get money to give to GB, for example. But there's nothing inside this budget that's going to fix the garbage situation. The minister presented nothing in his presentation to deal with our current situations because the minister didn't present any capex to say, listen, we have, our population consists of this amount of people. We know that our population has increased since X amount of years. We know that persons are ordering a lot more products, right? We know persons are consuming a lot more. So we can't just blame the garbage haulers because they are trying their best, but we don't have enough garbage bins. But there's nothing in this budget, right, that says, hey, we're going to buy garbage bins. What I did hear was from the Ministry of TIAT that they are going to buy garbage bins for Phillipsburg only. Phillipsburg only. So again, we focus on tourism, but the residents of St Maarten that are feeling the impact every day, we are left out. Where in this budget reflects how the ministry is going to deal with the garbage situation? Nowhere. When we look at continuing with the Ministry of Rummy, the minister mentioned that he will be working on clearing up the backlog in domain affairs. And that's interesting because in the CC, we clearly asked these questions. And I asked the minister at that time, which I'll ask the question again, how much, so in terms of value, each top offender for government, for Rummy, in terms of long lease owed, how much is the top 15? So we have, in the past, we had this. So we know X amount of entities owes government this amount, and then we set up a task force to go and tackle this to collect the revenues. But in the first couple of months, we collected, I believe, 3 million guilders and back and revenues owed. I know that the former chief of staff had this task force dismantled, but since the dismantling, the collection of these fees has decreased significantly. I think, I'm not even sure they have started a process. So I'm going to ask the question again to the Minister of Rummy. How much in value is the top 15 offenders that owes us money for your backlog? Because what are you cleaning up if you don't have this information? We speak of data-driven, but what is the data then? How can you clean up if you don't have the data? The minister also showed in his, he also mentioned in his presentation he would need to get, in this junior CC, that he would need to get information from the receiver's office. It's a few months removed since then, so Minister, through you, Madam Chair, have you gotten the information from the receiver's office to be able to calculate or know the backlog to deal with? In the presentation, the minister mentioned that they will also be dealing with the backlog of permits. So what is the total backlog of the permits, and what is the value in terms of funds to government for that backlog? And the reason why I'm asking these questions because that is a budget-related question. I am trying to help the government get revenue so they can execute their projects. So again, if you're just saying we're going to deal with the backlog, let's deal with the most important aspects first. So what is the total value of the backlogs that we can expect from the permits department? And how is the ministry expect to clear up this backlog? Because when I look at the budget, the FTEs are not there. So are you going to hire more persons? But how are you going to hire more persons if the FTEs are not budgeted for? So I would like a real detailed plan of explanation of how do you plan to deal with the backlog of the permits? Because I know that the department tries their best, They're short-staffed more than likely. So what is your plan to help support the staff to be able to execute and getting this backlog done? Minister, is there any, or has there been any new construction in the lagoon area? So did you approve any building permits for any kind of construction in the lagoon area? And I have to talk about this again because I've heard you mention it. I've heard your colleagues mention this when you were MPs. I see it a lot on Facebook. Will there be, by you or your ministry, any construction pause in 2025? Can we expect a slowdown in construction in 2025? Or is there a plan for any construction pause in 2026? So is that part of your vision, Minister? Is it part of your vision to implement any sort of a construction pause? The minister and the CC also talked about the side road projects and drainage and how important drainage is, and in 2025 we will execute drainage. Where in the budget, Minister? Give me the line item, or CapEx, anywhere. Where in this budget will drainage be addressed? Because on radio and interviews we mention it consistently, but where in this budget is it addressed? Which line item?
MP, just a friendly reminder to talk through the chair, please.
Yeah, I did.
Thank you.
That's why I said ministry. So again, where is the drainage situation being addressed by the ministry? And I saw maybe a little bit of shade being thrown by in the previous CC regarding the side road projects or the hard surfacing of all the dirt roads. And that was the vision of myself and the former minister of Rummy to say, hey, we are a tourist destination, and we also want to create more value for our people. We want to take all dirt roads and make them into, at the very least, concrete roads. And you know who went ahead and followed us? Anguilla, right? If you look at the minister of Anguilla, Mr. Hayden Hughes, one of his main things that he promotes right now is no dirt road in Anguilla be left unturned. Every dirt road in Anguilla will be hard surface, and they are ramping that project up, ramping that project up. And for me is, why do we always have to be second best? We came up with this vision, let's execute. I see that the Minister of TIAT announced the Soul Beach Jazz Festival, and I support initiatives that bring more tourists to the island, especially initiatives that try to bring tourism to our low season, so from May up until October. Based on the information that I have, is that Aruba had to pay about a few million to secure the festival upfront every year. Does the government of St. Maarten, to be able to secure the festival, have to secure any upfront funds and pay it out? I see a smile, so I'm assuming it's so. Does the government of St. Maarten have to secure any couple of millions or any amount of money up front to secure this festival? And if so, how much? Because in this budget, and again, based on the information that I have from Aruba, I'm assuming that St. Maarten will be very close to the amount. It's not reflected in this budget. In this budget, I don't see so big reflected. So I would like to know from the Minister of Finance and the Minister of TIAT the amount needed to be secured for Soul Beach, and where exactly are these funds coming from? I would also like to know, why did Aruba government, and also I looked at their information come from Aruba Tourism Authority, why did they not support Soul Beach anymore? So what is the reason why they say, you know what, after 24 years, we don't really want to do this anymore? I think it's also good for us to know. Again, I'm all for initiatives that bring more tourism. And Minister, I would like to know, as I mentioned, where is budgeted, and I would like to know which line item exactly, specifically, I could find the monies for Soul Beach. And as I mentioned, I'm for new initiatives, but it cannot be when it comes to, for example, teachers, and to pay teachers or school boards, we say, hey, we have to wait until the budget is approved. We have to wait until the budget is approved to be able to pay out. But for anybody that's not local, we're going to find the money, we're going to find ways without the budget being approved to pay them out. We're going to find the money. We're going to find the 2 million, 3 million, 4 million guilders to pay anybody else that's not in St Maarten to pay them out. So we can find monies that's not budgeted for 2025 or 2024 for a foreign entity, but we can't find the money or the means or the ways of the budget to pay teachers or the police because it's not budgeted. So I would like also, in whatever way or manner, right, that we are finding the funds for Soul Beach and executing the upfront payment to them, that we don't wait until the budget, this budget is approved. We go and we pay the teachers now. If we are, and have, let me ask another question. Have you already paid Soul Beach? Have we already paid any cent to Soul Beach? Good. Before any funds are transferred to Soul Beach, please let's transfer the funds to the school boards. And whatever way we're going to fix Soul Beach, we're going to do the same thing for the school boards, however we do it. And when the officers need their payment in a couple of months, right, we're going to find the same way. We're going to do the same thing. A rule for one, especially one that does not live on St Maarten, should be a rule for all. Minister, I also like to have an overview of the projects planned for 2025 and to highlight which ones are taken up in the budget and which ones are not. As I asked before, I don't know if he was here, what is the position of the Minister of waiving fees of persons that have dated business licenses? And Minister, I don't know if it falls under you or the Minister of Finance or the Minister of the Prime Minister, because when we were there, the Minister of Finance took the initiative of this project. So the question now goes to all three of you. The enterprise support project that falls under the NRPB. Since October, they have been on a go-slow, not accepting any new applications, and they keep extending the go-slow every month. But we also know that it's closing, the project is closing. So every month that you don't accept new candidates means more entrepreneurs can't get into the project. So is the end date since March, or will it be extended since they have not been accepting applications? So is the end date still going to be March, or will they extend it since they have not been accepting applications? I believe this is a great program to help small businesses, so the government doesn't have any plans, or does the government have any plans to start a similar program to ESP since these delays are happening? Because there are a lot of persons that are still wants to be in a similar program. What are the reflow funds from this program? So the money has gone out to businesses, they are paying. What are the reflow plans from this project? I would hope that that money goes back to a similar project that supports small, micro, and medium businesses. Because I heard discussions about the reflows from the airport, but I haven't heard any discussions of the reflows from the ESP project. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to know from the government, in particular the Prime Minister, is there any update on the shareholder rep? So which ministers right now are in charge of what ministries. We didn't get any updates on that in the presentation. So is there any updates on the shareholder rep? So is TIAT, is everything still under the Council of Ministers, or have we now divided that among the ministers? And is it still a plan to divide it among the ministers? Through you, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Prime Minister, can we get a proper update and timeline on the BRA legislation? Prime Minister, to you, Madam Chair, the civil servants have concerns with the new scoring system. And maybe I should ask first, let me confirm, is there a new scoring system when it comes to HR? Based on this document, a civil servant needs a score of 80% on the evaluation to get an increment. Meanwhile, the scores for each assignment are from 0 to 4. So even if someone gets a 3 or 3s for all the evaluations, that would mean that you only get up to 75%. And will not get an increment. So you work very hard, but we make it almost now in the current system for 2025 almost impossible to get an increment. I personally believe the score needs to be adjusted immediately to 70%. We are basically giving more opportunities to fail than to pass. And it's very difficult for civil servants. We already basically don't get a lot of rewards. We definitely don't get a lot of benefits compared to the private sector. So having this system will be really detrimental to the psyche of our civil servants. We are basically making it almost impossible also to get a bonus unless it's through favoritism. We have a high turnover rate of civil servants already, especially as of recently, even the younger civil servants. So I would really hope that the Prime Minister reassesses this new scoring system, actually being put on pause, and adjust it to 70%. I know the previous Prime Minister actually had plans to get out of it totally. I don't think that the current HR cycle evaluation system is is robust or an effective system that promotes innovation or even helps to motivate civil servants. In addition to that, we've also added in a poor performance. So not just only needs improvement, we've now added another negative, which is poor performance. So we're now giving the supervisors more options for their staff to fail than actually grow and be promoted. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like for the Prime Minister also look at the consequences or clarify what are the consequences for poor performance and needs improvement, because there's no difference besides the name, and it's basically a redundant position within the document. Madam Chair, in the presentation through you, the Minister of Finance mentioned that part of the vision is to actually, something else that we brought up was the tourism tax, is estimated to be about 80 million guilders. And the minister mentioned that it's very important because this would then allow us to be able to potentially reduce wage tax. But it's only 80 million guilders. So what percentage is the minister looking to reduce wage tax? And again, why are we mentioning things in the budget or the presentation that are not reflected in 2025? Because if that's the intention, then where do we see this in the budget? Wage tax was 174 million guilders. Tourism tax is estimated to be 80 million guilders. That, for me, is not a significant reduction in wage tax, but I'll leave it up to the minister to be very specific on the percentage drop if the tourist tax comes into play. And would that mean that with this budget in 2025, we can expect a wage tax reduction? I want a very clear answer. Are we going to get a wage tax reduction in 2025? I don't see how, based on this budget and being there in that position, how this, not even for the next 3-4 months, how this budget is going to deal with the backlog of payments that the government has to make. I don't see it. So I'm going to ask the minister, through you, Madam Chair, what other plans are there? Because based on the presentation, the minister mentioned airport flyover fees. What is the estimated amount of the airport flyover fees? And is this reflected in the budget? Is there any plans? Because I don't see the vision, so I think it's going to become very simple. Is there any plans, through you, Madam Chair, by this government or the Ministry of Finance, to increase TOT? Is there any plans by this government, Minister of Finance, to increase TOT? And if so, by how much? And if so, by how much? Madam Chair, the minister also mentioned that part of the cost savings for government would be dealing with the vehicles of government, among others, but the minister would not address this until the data comes in, so she has the right data to execute. But Minister, and I want to give this in advance, I'll pass this SG to the chair for me, please. Madam Chair, so what I just gave you, a pass to you, was what we did what I started then in 2020, 2021, I believe up until 2022, and the data is still there. Every single month, every vehicle, we went over from a gas bomb book over to a card for every government vehicle. So the data is already there for the minister to be able to say, hey, we can track the vehicle's usage. And what we did was every week in the Council of Ministers, I would provide this report to the Council on the data usage per ministry, per department, per vehicle. That's how deep we will go and dive in. And then every quarter, I would even question, let's say, hey, Ministry of General Affairs, I see that in February of 2021, we had vehicles using X amount of gas, and now it has doubled. Explain to me why we are using more gas. What are you doing as a ministry that we are now using more gas than this time? And what we realized is that because we had this accountability done every single month, that persons were more aware of not abusing the vehicles. You see cars on the front side every week, right? So why is one, for example, we had one vehicle in one department that would have almost 5 times the amount more gas being spent than another vehicle. Without this data, there's no accountability. So if we really want to save money, we can't say we're not going to do everything the previous government did because we want something new when it's already there. What we also did was
Members, okay, you can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we also did was, in 2020, and what you're currently dealing with, we went from postpaid phones, we cut everybody phones, except for ministers at that time, we went over to prepaid phones. And then that data was also there. And so I don't know what data the minister is waiting on, but we also have that usage per ministry, per department, per individual. And what we would do is say, listen, we see that we top up your phone for $200 every month, but you only use 50%. So we're now going to reduce that amount to X amount. That data is already there. We worked in collaboration with the Ministry of TIAT, the Statistics Department that helped us create this.
MP, sorry for cutting you off. Members, please a reminder, we're public, and let's give the member the respect so that he can properly communicate. It's a little loud. MP, you can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, it can't be that everything that last government did, we're going to try to do something new to waste time, whereas this information is already there, and you have the Minister of TIAT next to you to be able to execute through the State Department. Minister, what I also realize is, through you, Madam Chair, that this government, it's basically 7 islands sitting before us, fighting for attention. If you look at different articles that comes out, we have the Minister of Finance, the Minister of TIAT, who's fixing the auditorium. So on the issue of the sports department, we saw a tender come out for that. We have the Minister of Finance that is dealing with digital archiving, which falls under the Ministry of General Affairs. We have the Minister of TIAT, who is working on cannabis, which was initially started and pushed by the Minister of VSR. We have the Prime Minister fixing roads and building houses. So sometimes I'm very confused on what is the responsibility of which minister, because there's so much overlap, right? And what happens is that the public gets confused even. And there's, again, but when we go back to the budget, we see none of this. The Prime Minister mentioned that he's spearheading fixing of roads and building houses, but nowhere in the budget you can see this reflected, nowhere. And why is the Prime Minister focused on fixing houses and roads and the Minister of Rami should be doing that? Going back to the Minister of Finance, the Minister, and I applaud her efforts, the Minister mentioned that she's going to look, the Ministry is going to basically deal with no more auctions and no more liens until or unless proper information comes to be able to say, hey, we're going to do as much as possible, give as much chances as possible before we do an auction or a lien. But I just want to confirm, through you, Madam Chair, isn't this already the case? From what I understand is the tax office, the first time they assess and they deal with the taxpayers receiving a dagtekening. The second attempt, it takes about 2 months for an armbanning. And the third attempt, after 2 months, another reminder is sent via the marshals. And if they don't hear from them in a fourth attempt, then they put a beslag on the property, et cetera, et cetera. So isn't there already a system in place to deal with auctions and backlogs? And I can understand that the minister wants to create her own policy, which I applaud. But then, Minister, clarification to the public, because now persons are already messaging me because of the farm position of, hey, I heard the minister say, no more auctions, no more liens, so I'm not going to pay. Good. Is the minister going to instruct the tax office to put a halt on all auctions or liens for the rest of 2025 until the policy that you mentioned in your presentation is drafted? Because I think it'd be very unfair for certain individuals in the first quarter of the year, second quarter of the year, to not have this luxury, but then the policy comes out, and then the other half gets it. So is the minister, I would like clarification for those listening, the listening audience, is the minister going to, maybe this week already, instruct the tax office that no auctions or liens will be executed for 2025, and a public campaign, an article, a new press release goes out to the public so that they are aware that this will not happen? And when that does happen, how does that affect government's revenue? How do you see that affecting government's revenue? I also saw no update from the minister regarding the not filing of taxes, something that came up in the CC. The chair of parliament, MP Westcott, also had a suggestion, but in your presentation, I saw no updates. It's soon filing season, and we need to be clear from the ministry about the non-filing of taxes for individuals. Are we going to see a campaign or explanation about this? Because again, since it came out, and I see a couple of articles came out about it, can we get a clear indication about this? And again, how is this affecting government's revenue? Madam Chair, again, going back to my initial comment, it was very clear to us as a public, as a parliament, that this budget reflects 2024, which I don't agree with. I think the budget should reflect 2025. The reason why we supported 2024, because we were in 2024 in the amendment. The budget does not reflect the vision of this government. The budget does not deal with the current issues of the people of St. Maarten. It does not deal with traffic. It does not deal with justice. It does not deal with, let's say, MP York mentioned the under the tree garages. It doesn't deal with the small man, but what it does deal with is giving the ones that can afford more opportunities. I hope to see some type of proper answers from the ministers, but especially the Prime Minister, on why we see presentations today with hopes and wishes and not a presentation that reflects your own as the leader of the Council of Ministers. Why are we seeing things that are not reflected in the budget? Are we just gaslighting the people? Madam Chair, that'll be all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irian. I will now adjourn the meeting so that the chair lady can return to her seat. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes.
Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, ministers of the Council of Ministers, support staff.